Yeah.
I mean, fires create different chemical compounds, so it's creation too, for sure.
Yeah.
And if that's my intent, then inherently it's creative, bitch.
Yeah.
I love you. And your belt buckle.
No, thank you. Hello! The Sonic City Council is now in session. Thank you once again for inviting us into your headphones, your car, your home, your mind, wherever you are listening to us. It is much appreciated. Hello, Mr. Davey Sipes.
Mr. Jesse Davidson. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, sir.
Blessings, citizens, blessings. Mwah. Not facetious.
No, not facetious
I do love
at
you
all.
guys very much.
Yeah. We love you for your continued support and patronage here at this weekly council meeting.
Truth.
About creativity and art and thinking and stuff in life from the creative perspective. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And leaning always on the edge of creative progress.
Oh.
Always on the cusp of innovation.
A little bit forward every single day.
Yes. Like
Yes.
that flat tire motion you indicated.
Yes. One of my favorite types of grooves to play. Flat tire.
When we got two bass players in the room, you're going to get to talking about the flat tire groove. People.
Yeah, eventually. Sooner or later.
Sooner or later. It's
Hopefully.
just like when drummers go, ooh, that purdy shuffle. And I'm like, yeah, that's my shit. I love that purdy shuffle.
I mean, eventually it'll be like a SpongeBob Krabby Patty order where I want a purdy shuffle with a flat tire. How do you do that?
Oh, snap. Well, then you got to call SpongeBob in and he'll walk you through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's the guy.
Yeah. Burn it and let it swim. Is that what Bubble Bass said? Yeah.
Yeah. Burn
Yeah.
it and let it swim? I think so, yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Hiding pickles. Bubble bass, I'm going to get you.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you.
Hiding pickles under your tongue.
Well, and I'm happy to be talking with you today, as usual.
Thanks for picking me up at the hospital.
Yeah, well, I was going to say through line from the last podcast. Also, I'm glad you're thinking in that direction because...
I dragged that bit in?
Yeah, you'll notice I'm wearing a certain shirt that I referenced last week.
You
which
sure
is
did.
The,
is this how they spell it?
Yeah.
That was the curiosity of it all.
Yes, B-U... Hold on, let me look at it.
We gotta look at
B-U-C... dash E-E-S with an apostrophe.
An apostrophe.
Yeah, Bucky's. Yes.
The apostrophe team I expected, but the dash, that hyphen in the middle.
Yeah, I got the hyphen in the middle.
Exotic.
Yeah.
They knew what they were thinking.
Well, and also Bucky's with no K and 2 E's and an S is very exotic.
That's borderline unorthodox.
Yeah, very unorthodox.
Subversive?
But that's why I love it. I have an attraction to the unorthodox and the subversive. Hence
my presence.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hence why you're the co-host.
Yay.
So yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, if that fucking weird, like, Swedish licorice was a person, I'd be that.
Yeah. And we would just like
Cool
to...
people like it, but I can't stand it.
Yes, and we would like to extend this offer to Sonic City listeners. When you're passing through Texas, head into Bucky's. Use the promo code at checkout Sonic
City Council.
Yeah, at the attendant.
Right into their mouth.
Yeah, they won't know what you're talking about, and they won't know anything about this podcast. But hopefully, if we get the word out, we will get some sort of weird regional sponsorship from Bucky's.
Let it accumulate,
Yeah.
Put it on your TikToks, and then, of course, smile and pay for your stuff. Because we don't want you to get in no trouble.
Yeah, you won't get
I can only represent him in court.
Yeah.
I can't represent you guys yet.
No, you won't get any discounts, but you'll be cool, at least
You'll be
to
cool.
two people on this couch.
Hells yeah, you will.
So, yeah, and hopefully that'll get some buzz going and be able to... I don't want to promote anything I don't stand behind, and I stand behind that chain.
That's integrity.
Yeah.
This man has integrity.
Yes.
I'll promote anyone who pays. But that's the curious blend that makes this thing work.
We did get that message that I thought was spam about that it's like a ripoff of the Manscaped. It's some sort of like...
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
I don't know. Should we contact them, see if we can be brand ambassadors for some sort of hair trimmer? I don't know. Is that the direction we want to go in?
It seemed almost worth it because it seemed like the way I read the email seemed like if we did something or talked about them or like used it on the program, then they would tell 5 of their internet friends about us.
Yeah.
And that seemed totally worth it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, and it sounded like product that we might get to keep, maybe, or not. I wasn't sure. Yeah, so I'm on board, 100%.
All right, well, who knows? We might be doing that in the near future, so we'll see.
Exciting.
Yeah, very exciting
What
things.
is it? Branded content. That's what
Branded content.
Yeah,
Well-
we're with those guys.
Yes. Well, speaking of branded content. I don't know.
Or with like a iron.
Yeah, or speaking of exciting things, I guess I should say.
Okay.
I've brought, yeah, I don't know. That's a segue. I brought in, other end of the gavel, using the shank of the stick, as a drummer would say.
Yeah, I like the tone it creates.
Yeah, exactly. We have a guest on who I just recently met in Nashville during my time out there. And her name is Sam Ferrara. She's a singer-songwriter and is having her debut single come out July 2nd. Yep. And she's having a single release party the following day. And so wanted to get her on here just because we met somewhat briefly, and I got to hear her play a few times, and she's got a great voice and a knack for songwriting, and I really loved the songs that I got to hear her perform, but I didn't get a chance to really talk with her much about her life. So, as we do here, I wanted to dive into where she's coming from musically and creatively.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, take the plunge.
Yes, and now we shall speak with Sam Ferrara on the Sonic City Council bookworm impression that I am doing. Michael Greenblatt, for anybody that knows that reference.
I'm just British.
Which is why you're stiff and uncomfortable, and
That's why my mouth is like a frog.
you keep all your feelings just behind your jowls. And
Packed
you never
behind the jawline.
yes, so you never let them out.
For Britain.
Let's get into it. All right, Sam Ferrara, thank you so much for joining us on Sonic City Council today. We appreciate you.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. This is actually my first podcast ever. Can you believe that?
Yes. Yes.
So I said to somebody one time, I said, man, I need to be on a podcast someday because all I do is talk. And, what a mood. So, I'm so
Hey.
Well,
You are in the right place, definitely. We welcome talkers on this platform. So if you like to talk and talk about music and creative things, we are glad you're here.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
blah, blah, blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Definitely.
And then I said, so what do you got?
Well, I was going to say, I just recently met Sam through my friend Lewis, a.k.a. Slice, as he's going by out in Nashville.
Slice.
Yes, and I would say out of all of the week and change that I was there, about 9-10 days, I would go see Lewis play a few times and happen to see Sam performing with Lewis at writers' rounds and around town and things like that.
Cool.
And in wanting to get some more of the cool Nashville people I met on the podcast, Sam was one of the first folks I thought of. So and now here we are.
Well played, sir.
And the timing is perfect because you got your new single, your first single actually, if I have my information correct. Whiskey Memories coming out July 2nd.
Yes. Yeah,
Dude,
next Friday. Oh my God.
Yeah. I was gonna say, so this is quite a momentous occasion for you. How are you feeling? Is it is it surreal? Is it exciting? What's going through your mind at the moment?
You know what? It's just been such a long journey to even get here. So the fact that I'm oh yeah, July 2nd. Okay, now next Friday. I'm wait a second. Next Friday, I'm going to be an artist that has music out for everybody to hear. And I've been doing it myself for so long. And I wrote this song back in 2014. I wrote it so long ago that I'm wait, it's actually going to be out now. So what?
yeah.
So it's a surreal moment, but it's pretty amazing. I mean, I've been a musician my whole life, whether I'm playing woodwind instruments or I'm singing or I'm on a stage acting. I've done that too. I've done so many aspects of music that it's kind of cool to do something different and now be wow, it's real. It's going to hit me next week when I hear it on iTunes and then I cry and then I'm oh my God.
Yeah.
All emotional. So.
Yeah.
Aww.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That
it's I think it's great when you have those moments because it's I don't know, there's something about and that was me for the longest time, I would say, like not having music out online for people to check out. And it's a validating thing, not for any other reason than that people could finally hear what you're about. And so I relate to that feeling of, oh, wow, this is finally going to, go out into the world and people could hear it. And I could send it to people when they ask me if I have any music out. I don't have to just, say, oh, no, one day, maybe,
Send
eventually.
videos,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you've got your, Oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
go for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I've had so many people that have been like, so when is your music coming out? So when is your music coming out? Like, oh my God, when am I going to hear? Like, and I'd be like posting like itsy bitsy tidbits like online, and I'm just like, soon, guys. And it's it's funny. I feel like I'm a big fan of Hunter Hayes, okay? And he uses the term soon all the time, where it's just like, oh, it's coming soon. And people online be like, what the hell does soon mean? Like, so now I feel like him for a second, and I'm like, soon. And they're like, what's your definition of soon? And I'm like,
yeah.
Closer than you think.
Yeah, you're right.
I'll get back to you.
You're forever in that scene
we're
from
here.
Spaceballs where they're crossing the desert. Where they're just like, oh yeah, it'll be three. It's just 3 dunes. It's like just another dune.
Just over the next dune.
Yeah, no, you said that 3 dunes ago.
my God.
It's like, it's like, oh, soon. It's like, yeah, well, you said that 5 soons ago. When is this gonna happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Well, and you've got your single release party the next day too, right? And so it's not only will you have the you're gonna have the actual release day, but then you've also got that party, and that happened with my band. We put out our EP, and then we had a EP release show locally, and everybody came out for that. We had friends driving from LA. Coming out here to the desert to check it out, friends who live in town. And I know you're going to have a great time, and it's going to be, especially out in Nashville, with everybody being as supportive as they are, I think that's going to be a great night for you.
Actually,
unfortunately,
as
you guys
funny
caused
as
the
you
pandemic.
say that,
Yeah.
it's...
Well,
anyways.
what's up?
Because it happened right before everything got
I
shut
was
down.
going to say, it's... But believe it or not, like I'm doing like a takeover in July with Nashville Writers Collective. But the party on the 3rd, I'm actually going back. I'm going back to New York. So I'm going to do it in my backyard in New York, and my friends and family and like everybody that's been dying to see me in New York is like, I want to see you live. So now everyone's going to come from like all over, like tri-state, New York, Long Island to come see. So we'll see how much of the backyard we can pack out. Just FYI, parents are buying a lot of burgers and hot dogs. So
that's always solid.
Yeah,
that's a solid move. That'll be awesome. Well, either way, it sounds like awesome. It'll be a really great time for you and a really awesome moment.
And it's just the beginning, Dan.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It is. Speaking of the beginning and going back to your roots, you have dubbed a term on this show that has sort of stuck that we call the origin story of who we get on here as a guest. We usually like to go back to sort of where they come from and their roots and kind of talk about, how they got into music and all that good stuff. So I actually wasn't able to find this out about you, so I'm curious. I think you said you were from New York area, right? Originally?
It's all
Northeast?
state.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
From Long Island, okay?
Long
Oh,
Island.
Long Island
It's
girl.
Long Island, New
Urban
York. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's stop the
Big
train
ol'.
real quick. So, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate Billy Joel? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'm pretty high on the Billy Joel scale, okay? Like, I rate him a 10. I saw him
Whoa!
at the Garden.
Okay.
He's
Oh, you are
amazing
so Long
live.
Island. Oh my gosh.
So like he just roams around Huntington like whenever he pleases. I had a friend one time that was in Huntington, and he goes,
like
"No
Jay
big
Leno
deal. I
in
just walked
Burbank."
by Billy Joel just playing a piano, like sitting on the street." And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
that is very Long Island."
Yeah.
That's too real. That's great.
It's crazy, but but I got to see him, like, he has that 360 stage, and I love that about artists. That's like, I'm a big fan of seeing Eric Church too. He has that 360 stage where you can see all
Eric Church is
around, and like everybody gets a seat. Oh man, invigorating Eric Church, okay? And we had seats behind the stage for Billy Joel. So I got to watch people looking out from behind him, and it was incredible. Oh my gosh, probably the coolest seats, coolest tickets, coolest show I ever went to. And Jimmy Fallon came as a guest that night. So it was freaking baller. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. It was big fun.
he giggled and broke the sketch.
He always does. He pops some sketches like, bro.
Definitely.
But he's so adorable.
Yeah. Well, that's
fucking awesome.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense with
Billy Joel's amazing.
Oh yeah, well, a quick aside, like just with my buddy Lewis, that's like one of his favorite artists, and he'll reference him, and so it makes sense why you guys click musically if you're both a fan of Billy Joel. It makes
he's
sense.
got crazy good influences, and I love that. And a lot of Slice's music sounds like Billy Joel, honestly, and I'm like, man, I can totally hear those vibes.
Yeah, definitely. So
she knows her roots.
Yes.
That's what's up.
Yes.
All right.
So with growing up in Long Island, when did you first start getting into music? Were your parents musicians? Like, kind of paint a little bit of a picture of like that sort of the early musical youth of Sam.
Super demanding.
So I kind of figured early on, like my mom. Okay, so my dad's not really the musician. He went to school to be a vet, but my mom, when she was growing up, she was she did theater stuff. She was in the marching band. She was a twirler, but she also played glockenspiel at one point. It was pretty funny. There were amazing pictures of that, by the way. Nice. And my mom just enjoys musical things. So I'm not sure I would say the musical influence came from probably my mom's side more. But I started when I was in the 4th grade, just like any other kid would. I mean, I started singing when I was in kindergarten, 1st grade, because, that's what you do in general music, and you sing in choir, and then you do concerts, and you do this, that, the other thing. And then I decided to play the clarinet in the 4th grade, and I fell in love with that, and so I did chorus, and I did band, and I got asked to be in the orchestra, and I got to do that all throughout middle school and high school. And when I was in middle school, I picked up secondary instruments, so I also play saxophone, and I played bass clarinet, and
nice.
I did NYSSMA, what they call it, in New York, and had high ratings, and went to all counties, and I love jazz, and I did vocal jazz, so I was the best in my school. That was the best on Long Island. That got to go sing upstate, and I got to do some really cool opportunities, and I had a lot of amazing influential teachers growing up. All my music teachers are amazing, and they influenced me to be a better musician and to be a better artist, as in general with music. And I did one of my last teacher, Mike Rubenstein, who is an amazing trumpet player, might I add. He plays around in New York all the time, and he's great. Had influenced me to become a music teacher, and he was like, "Oh, you should be a music teacher." And I'm like, I said, "It's not really my scene. I mean, it'd be cool." And I kind of got veered when I went to college. So ultimately, I went in the beginning for performance, but I had somebody tell me, "I don't know if you'd be the mold or the fit for performance, so you might want to have a backup plan." So I'm like,
what does that mean, though?
It's not my
thing.
thing.
What do you mean by that? I got to come out of pocket because I got a performance degree, and I'm like, it's harder than everything else, but if somebody tried to tell me I couldn't do it, I'm like, what, are you trying to get me psyched up to do it faster?
Yeah, right.
I was like, you can't hold me back with some shit like that.
Yeah.
What do you think that meant, my dear? That's just weird.
I couldn't believe I had somebody that told me that. And I was like, ugh, And then I decided to do education. So I kind of veered off the path for a little bit. And then in 2013, right at the end, I finished school, I did all this stuff. And I'm right at the end where I have to do student teaching, all this stuff. And I saw, like I said, Hunter Hayes is my big influence. And I saw him play. And he's literally a male version of myself. I play all these instruments and I do all these things. And I saw him play. And I said, I turned to my mom and I said, "That's me. That's what I need to be." And she goes, "Well, you need to finish school first before you go on any venture of this sort." Whoa. So I was like, all right. So that's what I did. I finished school. I went and got my master's about 2 years later. But in between all that time, I went back and I was like, man, like performing, that's what I want to do. And I was signing up. I do pit orchestras back at home. Like, shout out to my Sam fam. Woo woo. So I got to do a lot of that performing, and I got to do a lot of like different projects and stuff along those lines, and just more with instrumental. And I started fishing into songwriting, and I never really knew that you could make money for. Yes, you physically knew you could, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I could do this, and I can do this, which is crazy. And I'm like, I think I'm going to try this. So, and then I met a lot of people, a few people along the way that like are in my clicked circle, and like in that path between like 2013 and 2017, and that was like the influence that made me want to move to Nashville. I came to Nashville for a conference that October, so like the summer I picked that up of 2013, the songwriting, and then in that October I got off the bus and I was in Nashville for the first time ever, and I was like, this is where I belong. This is like my entire world here. Like, this is my life, like exactly to the T. And I just really dug and ground to get here. And I went and got my master's, and I did my master's thesis in incorporating bass clarinet into country and bluegrass music, which is something I am working towards right now. Not on this particular album, but I'm hoping in the future. There was something I think I did with Slice that we are we're looking to experiment with that project, and I want to do it in more of my music coming down the line, and be a female who breaks in the industry with that, because bass clarinet can be a secondary to a string bass. They're very similar in a lot of ways in holding a group together. So it can definitely be that modernized 21st century instrument to go in there. Because, we see in country music, we have all these brass. Like, you have like these big band stuff, and you got Thomas Rhett who does it, and Kenny Chesney who does it, and like now John Party, and all these, and influencing it and tying it into country music. And I'm like, man, you could do that with this too. So I did a lot of research on that, and that made me want to go get my master's so bad, because I was like, man, I got to write a paper on this. And and I did it, and my teacher was crazy. He's like, oh my gosh, you're crazy because you did this. But I don't know, there's just so many different influences with country music, which is why like I'm diving into country. So for the most part, that's just how it all started, and here we are.
Well, that's awesome. Well, and not only do you have that eclectic background, but it sounds like you've always had that pull, just pulling you towards music even as a kid, and it was just something to where you pretty much you found your thing early on, or it found you, and you've always sort of stuck with that path. And then when you end up in a city like Nashville, coming from Long Island, how did you first feel like when you got into the city? Because I know that like even just visiting just recently, I felt like I didn't feel like anybody was like pushing you away, or like, what are you doing here? Why are you here? It's like a very supportive environment. So if you're feeling drawn towards music and you end up in that kind of place, did you feel like a part of it right away? Did you feel like, you found your clique of people? Like, what was that transition like?
Funny enough, I didn't, because I started when I moved here, I started and got a full-time teaching job. I didn't jump in right away, which is going to be super unique, and people are going to be like, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, I want to get my feet in the water as an actual human being in Nashville first, and like get established in some sort of way in one place or another before I jumped in to doing music. And actually the second year I was living here is actually when I met Slice, and my friend was like, oh, come with me to my friend Lewis's house. And I was like, all right, and that's when I met Lewis. And and he's like, I want to write with you. Like, you seem really cool. And I'm like, okay, cool. And, and we did, and we just clicked really quickly. And he was like, oh, you got to meet my other friends, and clicked with them. And at the time he was working with another artist, and that artist had asked me to sing background vocals on their album. And I was like, well, sure. And that's just kind of how it clicked super quick. But I just got used to writing with him and just getting into Lewis's clicks. And then, in end of 2019, I'm like, it's time. I have enough material. Like, it's time. Like, I really want to perform. Like, I want to go out and play. And he goes, all right. He's like, we'll get something together. And we did. And then the pandemic happened. And I got a little extra time to write more stuff. And I'm part of NSAI here in town.
NSA?
And they have a lot of the NSAI. NSAI, it's Nashville Songwriters Association.
Nashville Samurai Association.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
No,
and if I,
no, she songwriter, not a spy.
And if somebody listens to this podcast that
I said
knows
samurai.
That, yeah. I know. If someone hears this podcast and I said that wrong, like, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, how did you not know this? All I know it is.
Well, if they say that, they go burn hell.
NSAI.
I was going to say, yeah, if they're nitpicking, come on.
No.
First of all, turn us off now.
Yeah, I was going to say,
go kick yourself.
give Sam some slack, y'all. Don't be too harsh about that.
But
okay.
I did this Rise program with them, and it just kind of helped me like mold my songwriting and meet other people and get to learn to write with other people. And it was a really cool experience. Actually, in the second, I did like a second one this past December, and I got to work with Liz Rose, and she is incredible. She's like a big powerhouse songwriter here in Nashville, and I absolutely adore her. And it was really cool for her to hear some of the stuff that I've already written, and she was like, oh, like, I really like what you have. And I'm like, wow, somebody with that stature likes something that I wrote? That's crazy. What? So, so I got experiences like that really helped me grow as a songwriter and just writing with different people and just clicking. So it took a year to get there, but once you started writing with one person and then you write more and then you get to meet their friends and then they're like, oh, well, I want to write with you. And then click. I think really honestly, it's clicked more in the last maybe like year than it did the first couple of years. But it's just really getting to get out there and know people. And when you do that, everybody is so warm and welcoming here too. And just like, hey, I want to help you. And I've seen writers come in and they're all like, hey, like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, hey, I want to help you. Because why not? Like, that's what country music's all about. I feel like in other genres, it may not be the same. But like, you come here and everybody's like nice and wants to work with each other and help each other succeed. And that's what it's all about. You don't want to tear people down.
No, and it's
Don't you though, Jesse?
you might, Davey. I don't know.
I tear people down with a glance. So
where's
the fun in that?
Yeah, there you go. No, I think it's.
I got a nice death glare. Okay.
Oh yeah, you got it in case you.
I got a nice. Of course, you know. Yeah. There are some people that might need it. So.
Yeah. You ought to have it in your back pocket just in case. Yeah, I think just from my experience, it seems like just picking up on it, it's people who are into that supportive, welcoming vibe are, become a part of the scene. And then it seems like, and Lewis was telling me about, like, there's been people that have been standoffish and, like, not necessarily supportive that have tried to come into, like, writers' rounds or other things. And then usually they don't end up meeting people or, like, they don't make those connections. And I think it's good for a music scene to kind of, it doesn't mean everybody has to like get along all the time, but there's a general sort of like, hey, if you're generally a cool person, supportive, you're not, a mean, nasty person, then like, yeah, welcome aboard, come. You
didn't just glance, but you looked all the way over when you said all of that phrase. And I love that.
Sometimes, as my attorney, as you've stated, sometimes it's just, looking at you. It's looking at you for reassurance and not accusatory.
Yeah. Well, don't remember, if you're ever doing something that might, endanger you legally, I'm going to chime right in and be like, look, we can't comment at this time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and why wouldn't I trust your opinion? Because look at that
Look
hat.
at this fancy hat. Look at these glasses and such.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, fantastic. Yeah, and and I'm sure getting those boosts of confidence, whether it's just meeting people and making friends and writing with other people, and then having a big moment like, hey, this person writes with a lot of people, they're well established in the music scene, and they like what you're doing. That's huge. That's a lot of fuel to keep going and pushing forward at what you're doing.
It definitely helps a little bit, that's for
Yeah.
sure. Because I know, like, sometimes, like, you could be banging on doors and getting no all the time. So that one person that says yes
sure.
could be that push, that extra push for you. You know,
Yeah.
that definitely is a hard thing in the industry too.
Yeah. Is that something that, you know, everybody has their, we've talked about this with different guests, everybody has their thing they have to overcome, like personally. The more you dive into your craft, the more you're going to be looking at yourself and figuring out where your personal blocks are. And is getting that confidence and going, hey, my material is good enough, and hey, I'm good enough to be going out there and pursuing this. Was that like one of the hurdles you had to overcome?
I don't. Wow, that's a really tough question.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely
It forces
days,
you to be vulnerable.
I will
Well,
say.
I'm the mean one.
Yeah.
I mean, songwriting, that's definitely a thing. I will say, though, there was a time, I think it was last March, it was right as the pandemic started. I had met with another artist, like I was in his music video or something like that. And, you know, he was like, oh, I'd love for you to write something to this particular beat that we made. And I'm like, all right. And I took it and I sat with it for a couple days, and I'm like, crap. I said, this is not how I work. I've never done it this way before. And I know songwriters have a different way of writing, whether they're writing lyrics first and then music, which is usually how I do it. Or like if I hear something in my head, I take like I take my phone and I'm like, do my message and I'm like, whatever. And then I bring it to a co-write. Or, you know, sometimes I get the melody first and then we're putting the music together or something like that. I mean, this was the first time I ever did it, and it was like, hey, like, can I send this your way? And I was like, and it was just me. And honestly, I wrote something that I thought was horrendous, and I was like, oh my gosh. And he was like, no, it's great. And I'm like, no, I said, this is not the best thing I have in the box, to be honest. And I felt really crappy about it. And then about 2 weeks later, I went and wrote with somebody else, and the song was like made as a demo by this other guy, and it was pretty awesome. And I had people messaging me like, man, like, I feel the impact of this, and I can't believe you co-wrote this with somebody. And I was like, wait a second. I said 2 weeks ago, I probably wrote the shittiest song I could ever write. But yeah, there are definitely ups and downs. And I had mentioned that to somebody I had mentoring me, and they were like, it's going to happen. They said that's just a way of life, and it's okay. And that's just the way it's going to be. And I'm like, wow. I said, I've never really experienced that. But I will tell you, I have experienced where I have days where I could write forever, and then there are days where you go on like a dry spell. And I'm like, okay, like I want to sit and write, but then I get derailed and I'm like, oh my gosh, not today. And then I walk away and come back, and, you know, or I'm writing like a couple of one-liners and I'm like, all right, I'll come back to this later, which, you know, that usually ends up being success. But there are definitely days where it's like dry, and I'm, you know, I'm not the person who's writing every day, which I probably should be writing every day, which is kind of stupid. But there are days like I definitely take like a week, or like be like, okay, a couple weeks, and I write like every day straight. And then there's like a week where I'm like, maybe not.
Yeah, but so
you know?
Even though it's intermittent, are there times when you sit down and you're applying the process, like as opposed to something coming to you? Like we all know that moment where, oh, there's some inspiration, you save it into the phone and then twiddle with it later. Have you been sitting down and trying to like, okay, now some time to write, and then you approach a piece of material? Are you doing anything in that kind of way at all?
Yeah, sometimes that, you know, and that's most times, like, if I'm not somebody that can actually, like, sit down and write something fresh, I am revisiting material that I've written before, and then I'm like, okay, because I'm somebody that could write something solo and then bring it to the table for, like, additional assistance. Most times, that's actually how Whiskey Memory happened. I wrote that just based off of a Carrie Underwood lyric, and I was like, okay, like how would this be? And I just went right after it, and that took 30 minutes to get down on paper. Oh wow. And then I was like, okay, like I'll save this for a rainy day. And then when I moved to Nashville, I had met my co-writer, Peyton Goski, she's my co-writer on that song, and I brought it to her, and she came up with a melody, but she's like, okay, maybe we want to flip something like this and flip that, and that kind of works a little bit better because she's got a little upper hand versus, of writing versus me, who's got a couple years, she's got a little more experience. So I was like, okay, and it just rolled together so quickly to have another set of eyes, which is why I love co-writing. But every now and again, I do have something that, like, I just literally will spit out, or, I'll come back to the table and work on something that I had been working on in the past that I would work on. But sometimes I bring that stuff to co-writes too, and I'm like, hey, can you add anything to this, and see where it goes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very. The other thing I think that's interesting in that is the phenomenon of when you, like, play a gig, or you write something, or you present something to somebody else creatively that you think is either, you're just like, I'm not happy with that, I'm not satisfied with how this turned out, and then for some reason people end up liking it, or you kind of
create... Because you're just pissing all over it with your own, your limited perspective.
Yeah, well, and
that's all it is.
Or it feels like a throw.
You're teeing it up wrong. Both y'all are teeing it up wrong. It's be like, I came up with this. What do you think?
Yeah.
I'd rather be at the mercy of somebody's opinion that way and be like, if they trash me, well, then they're not nice. Instead of me being like, I need you to validate me by telling me this is not the biggest piece of trash I've forced you to listen to.
Well, sure.
It's like saying, I cooked something shitty, put it in your mouth and tell me it's good.
No, I won't preface it like that, but it's just like... I'm not trying to preface it like that. I just think it's funny where moments where you end up feeling like, oh, you might not even say it out loud. You just feel like this is not my best for whatever reason. You're not feeling like this was great. And then for some reason people respond to it and they go, oh, wow, that was awesome. And they're not being facetious or giving you, like, a false sense of confidence or just being nice. They're genuine. And I'm like, what is that phenomenon? Why is that? Why is it moments where we feel like, we kind of shrug about some... I don't know if you have a feeling about this, Sam, but I've been thinking about this lately.
I have definitely had moments like that where I'm like, oh, how does this sound? It's like something I recorded and, like, someone will listen to it and I'm like, I don't know, kind of sounds like shit. And then they're like, no, it sounds great. I'm like, what? I said, please, you're humoring me. And they're like, no, really, it's great. And I'm like, I probably could have done this better. Because as musicians, we're perfectionists, okay? So we're like, we want it to be, like, as perfect as it can be. And we're like, oh, we are still, like, that's how our minds are programmed. We're like, it's not perfect. But you know what? It's okay. Sometimes not everything has to be perfect, like... It's cool. And I'm getting used to the fact that I'm like, maybe I do a performance. And I actually had that happen, was that last night? I sang at one gig and I was like, I thought I sounded like shit at the one gig. And then I went to the other gig and I was like, this one was better. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? The other gig was fine. And I was like, no. And they're like, no, really? And I'm like, right.
Yeah.
We all have those moments. I mean, I'm shocked. I know, and every now and then I'm like, I wrote this. What do you think? And it's like, yeah, that's good, but we probably tweak it to be a little bit better. And I'm like, okay. And then, like, I'll listen to their opinion. I'm like, okay, like, that's fine. Like, it sounds great. Like, it ends up being, like, a little bit better. And I'm like, okay, like, that works with me. I mean,
that's been my experience.
Cool with that. Because we're still preferencing the same idea.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, and it's not like authorship changes the more people collaborate with an idea that you initiated. I don't think so. I think it's just like a film at the end of the day. I feel like as a songwriter, if you created the essence of it and then other talented people will help you finalize it, well, that makes you like the director. And that's all I aspire to be, is making fucking movies. So, I mean, besides writing songs from time to time.
Well, right. Well, and that's
an analogy.
Yeah.
Well, it is. That is an analogy.
Yay!
And I don't know. I'm coming from it from two different places, because usually a lot of the writing I do on my own is like story writing. So I'll be writing pieces in journaling, writing stories in a notebook, things like that. But then anything I do in a musical context has always been in a band. I always, like, that's my thing. Being in a band with, three or four other people, and then I'll bring in an idea and then hit that to somebody else, like a beach ball or a volleyball. You hit that up in the air, and then somebody needs to like receive it and then hit it to somebody else. So it's like, hey, I have an idea for a bass line, or hey, I have a melodic idea, or here's chord changes. And then beyond that, I've never been able to really be a songwriter musically. I write songs with other people, and we're all sort of working on it together.
I think I'd be lying to myself if I said I did. Like maybe 10% of my song output to date, is like written completely by myself.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I didn't think that before, but now with the perspective I'm gaining with trying to record more of my original material lately, I clearly see that there's some sort of direct or indirect influence in every song coming from somebody I'm working with. Usually at the time.
Yeah.
So I think you'd be facetious for most songwriters, to say that, that think they work on their own, they probably, when you peel back the process, it's more collaborative than maybe they realize.
Maybe, yeah.
Because that's where I'm coming from now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And also, you're in a place, too, where I think you almost have to be a little less precious about, ideas, and I wonder what people think about it, because if you're performing regularly at these rounds, you not just for the fact of like everybody's going to be presenting new material, but you have a chance to like sharpen and hone that material being where you are in like in a really great way that you wouldn't be in most cities, I would say, in the country, because you can literally play probably almost every night of the week if you wanted to at some open mic, writers round, something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's for sure.
Yeah, is that been
but
something?
You know what? We're all growing with everything that we do as writers too. We have to remember that, like when we're in that process, and even though like we're learning every step of the way. There's like a thing one of my professors in college talked about where it's like you spend 10,000 hours learning your craft. Once you hit that 10,000 hours, you're like a professional pro at it. So I mean, we'll be sitting here doing it for a long time, and it just will come together. So we're learning, and we make mistakes, and we move forward from them, and we learn from those mistakes, and that's just normal in life in general.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's me always trying to reach for some bigger philosophical point that may or may not be there. Eye roll.
He's always eye roll from Davey. Eye roll, hard eye roll, stage left.
Cue the eye roll.
My man is always looking out the window, stroking his beard, going, why? And I was like, because the hydrogen expanded, man. What?
Yeah.
It's like you're not responsible for it and you have no control. That's the why.
I was going to say, with me, it's like 80% movie references, being a goober, stupid comment, 20% why are we here? I would say that's a pretty fair ratio.
That's the Jesse blend.
So if we can dip into the 20% just for a split second.
I'll allow it,
if you'll allow it,
yeah,
Counselor.
as your turn. I'll allow it.
Yeah, we love to see it. You're growing as a person by moving to a new city. So naturally, if you were doing this and you weren't in music, you would be evolving as a person and growing. And then you're also doing it as a musician. So you're getting this, you're having these happen at the same times, and also being a songwriter, you're pulling from your personal life to get material, usually.
Always.
And so it's this interesting, it's this intertwined thing of, wow, I'm changing as a person and a songwriter and both, and it's all sort of the same thing, and it's all happening at the same time. And as scary as all that is, it's probably really exciting, too.
What is fear but excitement?
Yeah, definitely is.
I legit can't tell them apart in my matrix.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's fear and excitement, I guess. That's a good point. They are kind of the same thing, sort of the same thing. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, that's something to ponder.
It's something to ponder.
Since we're standing at the Ponder Post out on the Ponderosa. Yikes. I'm talking to you a little bit, dog. Holy shit.
I don't know.
Dad jokes.
I was going to say, I don't know, man. I'm going to be hitting 30 next year and still doing this. And yeah, so I don't know. There's been extra pondering 30. More than usual. Yeah, I was going to say,
there you go.
In doing my research, I saw you just turned 30. I think you posted about that this year, if I have my information right.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. In some way, I have made it to the next level of being an old bitch. That's what I've been told.
Wow.
But,
that's New York right there.
That's what my friend texted me at midnight. She goes, happy birthday. You're now an old bitch at 30. I'm like, girl, don't even start. I said, you're a couple months behind me. Don't even.
Yeah, don't even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I look back at my 20s and I'm like, but, you know, what did I actually do? I actually did a lot, but, you know, it's just one of those, like, oh. And here we are in the next decade, but here I am going to make it better.
Yeah.
I can't
exactly.
underestimate personally the importance of, especially now that I'm turning a different 0 this year than y'all just did. But it's just a couple years forward. But it's like even at this time, I'm looking back and like re-examining like my life in my 20s more than ever, because it has a lot to do with the trajectories you end up on and a lot of things you want to unpack later.
Yeah.
It's things in your 20s when you're just trying to, in my mind, it was conform. Whatever you think about, whether it was like, you know, code switching between different family members, because that's how my life be like, or at jobs and stuff like that.
Right.
And driving forever distances to go to school and never getting sleep and all this kind of stuff. That was all like, oh, I'm just putting in the work and this is what's expected and people are telling me I'm doing a good job. And that went on to my whole 20s without a single consideration of how the fuck I actually felt.
Right.
So when I hit 30, fucking crash and burn. Because all those stupid philosophical questions came up.
Yeah.
So there's my take.
Yeah. I don't know.
Philosophy actually helped us in college, apparently. So
Apparently. Who
makes
knew?
us think, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it lets you keep your mind open because shit is going to happen. I learned that life experience is going to trump what you prepared to reckon with it.
Yeah.
Whatever you conceived of in your mind, it ends up being a
agree.
preconceived notion when you live through something that does, like, change you, that you do have to grow through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'd be curious if Sam has any hot takes on this or any observations. It seems like
I reckon
like
she
you
might. I reckon the young lady might.
You're just looking at my face right now. I mean, I've been through quite a few things that I'm just like, yeah, it definitely changes your outlook. I mean, oh man, I get into this all day.
I was
get in position so she can get into this.
I was going to say, whatever you're comfortable with talking about. So whatever you feel up to talking
it's cool.
about.
I mean, my early 20s, or when I was 20, you know, I went through just crazy shit. Cause like, and I think now, like 10 years later, and I'm like, man, I can't believe I actually like, look at where I was then and look at where I am now. And I'm like, if I went in a particular path, would I be the same person? And I know I wouldn't be. And it's just every piece leads you to everything that you do. Like 10 years ago, I was dating this guy and we'd broken up and I was just like, oh my gosh. And I went through this crazy stuff. And then my grandfather got ill and like, you know, I'm coming up on 10 years that he passed away. And after that, I was so shaken by that because it was like this whole epiphany moment that I was like, oh my gosh, like this ending of one thing started something else. And this ending is just like, I got a break from this. And I got an internship in Houston playing for a theater company with a dear friend of mine from when I traveled to Europe and playing music. And I literally, the week after the funeral, I literally packed a bag and left and was gone for like 2.5, 3 weeks. And I needed that. And I did something on my own without anybody. And like, you know, saw my family at the time was living in Houston. And I had like my cousin and her late husband. And we went to, I stayed with them a week and I stayed with my friend a week. And it just, you know, just doing that and doing something on my own by myself after I went through all of this change that I'm like, God, like, am I this person? And I was so unsure of where I was at the time in my life. And I'm like, but maybe I'll go to another college or maybe I'll change what I'm doing. And I'm like, no. I said, I got to stick to what I'm doing and I'm going to have to face the people I have to face. Like someday we're going to have to face live through those things. And I came out at the other end a better person. You know, and then it's weird because 10 years later, or just about 10 years later, I almost went through the same thing with another guy that I was dating. And I'm like, what? This idiot, like, and this idiot knew that past because please. I I mean, I count on my hands.
I don't need to tell you, but
how many guys I've dated.
Need to know.
Like,
these guys sound like idiots.
Yeah.
It sounds like estúpido.
Yeah.
But it's just ridiculous because this other guy, I don't know, people saw us as an item, but there was no label on this relationship, right?
Yeah.
And because he's just like, well, you're moving, and I'm like, and what's your point? You're not going to give this shot.
moving.
Meanwhile, he gave that 3 years a shot. I'm like, you're stupid. Anyways, but in the end, like, and he knew my whole past with this other thing, and it took me a really long time to open myself up to date other people, and I'm somebody that knows what I'm looking for and knows what I want. I'm not shortchanging anybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know, in the end, like, it just almost became the same thing. We didn't fight about anything, thank God, or anything like that. But it also taught me to, have respect for myself, because I said, I'm not putting myself in the same shit I was in 10 years ago all over again. No. Yeah. And this really, like, I sat in a van in New York City crying to my best friend, like, what do I do? Yeah. I literally, the guy would come running to get me at the airport all the time and hang out with me 24/7. And then, like, before I know it, before I decided, like, I'm going to peace, bitch, like,
yeah,
literally, I'm not even worth the time of day anymore. I said, what is wrong with this picture? And my friend is like, honey, you just gotta, like, and I'm like, you're right. But what was the right move to do that? And then there was just something I saw online, and I'm like, excuse me, we're done. I don't have time for this. I'm living a life that I'm, like, not even here. And, like, I'm not even, you're the focus of your world anymore. I'm not the focus of attention. And I knew the day was going to come. It was only a matter of time. And I was just like, I'll talk to you when I'm good and ready. And here we are almost 2 years later. And I have not said a single word to him. The person's reached out to me. He's, like, tried. He also currently lives here. He moved here.
Oh, man.
And
All
I'm
that,
like,
he moved there anyway?
what are we doing?
What
That's another story for another day. But
yeah, sure.
I'm just like, but what's your point? It just drives me nuts. Like, but you know what? I grew from that, because I'm like, I'm not going to let this tear me down. I said, I am much stronger than this. And you know what? A lot of, I'm going to Cycle Bar, and I would go to Cycle Bar all the time and just work out my anger and frustration. And just, I walked in a room and I wrote a song about it. And then, like, and that, not saying, like, that's the influence of that song and, like, some of my songwriting, I think of these things, but it just opens your mind to more. But I said, I'm going to be powerful in this, and I'm going to take the narrative of this. I'm not going to let somebody take my narrative. Mm-hmm. And I think it taught me to just be a stronger individual for myself and just move forward and show you, hey, look at where I am. Look at where you are. I am in a much better spot without, and I feel so strong. But, some of these things, people come in your life for a reason sometimes. And I think it was just to teach me to just be strong and be this person that I didn't think I could be, you know? So,
but you
it's
can.
just life situations change you.
Yeah.
Life situations change you.
Yeah, they do.
Hashtag life situations change you.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
See if they don't, bitches.
No,
See if they don't.
Yeah, I relate to some of that stuff a lot, because, like, 10 years ago for me, coming up in August, I had a similar situation with a grandparent passing away, and that was a huge life-changing moment for me of going, like, oh, wow. And, like, as soon as that happened, I didn't have, like, an opportunity like Europe, but it was pretty much like, passed away. I was in the middle of going to college and in a music program, and it was like, oh man, it was like pretty much like the first, class of, like, it was like the first week of school for that semester, and I just, like, didn't take any time off, probably should have, but just, like, jumped into school head on, and I'm like, I'm just gonna hit the ground running, because, like, this thing isn't gonna last forever. And had, like, this huge existential moment, and, like, I don't know, when I was like 19, 20. Yeah, 19, yeah. And same thing, looking back on, like, the last 10 years, I look at all of the people and moments and experiences I've had, like relationships, especially since we're just talking about that. And yeah, it's like these people come into your life for a reason. You know, if you look at like, oh, there was a life lesson here, there was a couple here, you know, there was a lot with, you know, certain people. And it's just like, you look at that, and yeah, especially as a musician, I've found that I've taken all of those experiences and all of those translate into some sort of, you know, way into my playing or my life in music. And it's all, at one point, you kind of realize how it is all connected, and these experiences feed each other. You know, your personal experiences feed the music, and then the music feeds your personal experiences, and then it just becomes this big intertwined thing, and it's kind of interesting, you know.
Intertwined thing is the metaphor you're going to leave us with?
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're a fancy writer.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I kind of also
sometimes.
learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also kind of learned in my early 20s as well, like after this, like my ex early on, like when I was in college, he just taught me about like what is priorities, what is important to you, and I never really, it never really sunk in until after the fact, you know. And we were all about, okay, like, you know, this you know, school comes first, family comes second, we're third, and I'm like, all right, that makes sense. And you know what? In the end, I wasn't keeping my commitment on what was important. And I was like, well, this is important right now. And it's like, no, like you can take care of this when this is done, you know? And I'm like, and it didn't really click. Now, all these years later, it clicks. And I'm like, what are my priorities? What's important? And I think that's where in this other relationship, I realized, you know, what is more important to me? Watching myself sacrifice myself because I, at the time, wanted this person and sacrifice what I want. Like, I almost didn't move to... I had a second thought of moving to Nashville before I moved in 2017. Yikes. Because of this ex. And I'm like, could you imagine? And my friends say it to me all the time. They're like, could you imagine if you never moved to Nashville? And like, granted, I had been on like 1 or 2 dates before I went on a couple dates with this guy. And I was just like, I'm moving to Nashville. Like, that's a thing. And they're like, well, then this isn't going to work. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, they're like, well, you're going to do this. I'm like, all right, well, whatever. But... yeah. And inspired that one person to go out and do what they wanted to do. Yeah. But this guy, in the end, it was just like, you know, I realized my priority is me. And I need to make sure I take care of me. And I take care of what I need to do to get things addressed. And I knew I'm going whether you like it or not. But I can't believe I had that second thought of not going. But I can't imagine myself not being here. My world would be different. I would be starting this game later. I would have never met the people that I met. And I'm like, it shows like where the priorities are. So I'm grateful for my ex in college because he instilled that priorities thing to me. And in the end, like, you know, my family is important and school was important. I made school a priority till the very, very end. So work now, party later, you know? And now when I do anything that involves work, it's work now, party later, you know? Yeah. And I always get those so fucking confused. That's kind of where we're at.
I get those so confused. Could you say it one more time, Sam?
Say it once for Davey in the back. Yeah.
How's it go? Work when?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's work now, party later.
Okay.
You know?
I have not been doing that so well.
Yeah. Fuck. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well.
It's all right.
Work now, party later.
That's the next hat. I'll put that on something. I'll put it here because I'm always looking at my veins. I'll put it right here.
Yeah, I was gonna say
work now, party later.
Yeah, keep that in mind.
Work now, party. I said it right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a deep dive, but that really got into some stuff that was meaningful. That was awesome.
Yeah. No, that's.
And you know what? I didn't make school. And I will say, when I was early in college, it was not a priority. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, like college. Shit. And I almost like failed myself out of college. I was like, what am I doing? And then like I met my ex from college and he's like, no, we got to make school a priority. And I'm like, okay. And that's when I did that. And I worked so hard to just bring everything back. And I couldn't, that's something I'm so grateful for. And if I could ever, you know, I don't know if he'll listen to this, but like, I thank him for that because I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for that.
Yeah, that's a good perspective to have.
Those things in life, you appreciate it.
Yeah. Very grounded perspective.
Yeah.
Grounded.
Yes, very.
Yes.
And
holistic.
Yes. Well, and you can see those moments where there's definitely like a fork in the road. You didn't even know that, you made the left when you should have, and then you look back on it and it's like, oh wow, that could have been dramatically different. And
You ever been to the fork in the road where the devil's like, you want to play guitar real good? And you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, here you go, poof, motherfucker. But there's a curse. And you're like, wait, what? And then he disappears. And
no,
you never,
no,
It's in Mississippi.
I was gonna say, yeah,
be careful when you go there.
Yeah, I haven't hit that particular crossroads yet.
Okay. Watch your step.
Yeah, watch your step.
Yeah.
And
you know what? We have to sacrifice the good things sometimes to get things that are better. I hate to say it that way, and it's just one of those things. I literally had a conversation about my mom about that.
Max, could you put that in a graphic in post? That's so good. I want it to be like a bubble, like the thought. That's the thought of the day, right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say
ferocious.
you better use that for a EP, album title, song title, lyric
Something,
somewhere
yeah.
in there. Yeah, because that's the truth.
That's definitely a song idea because I definitely think about it all the time. I see my friends getting married, having babies, doing things that normal people would be doing, and I'm like, hey,
Sounds gross.
I have a baby coming. It's my new album. Hey, and and I'm like, wow, like I could be doing this, but like at the same time, But you know what? I've read like messages from friends that are like, man, you went after the damn thing. Like I'm so inspired by you, or like I'm so proud of you that you never stopped. And those are the things that still really keep me going because honestly, I probably could have given up years ago and then never did this, but I'm glad I went after it. That's what life's all about. You only get one chance. You only get one chance in life to do things. You got to do it right. Do it right do it now, Yeah. It's the most important thing.
I'll concede this.
Oh, you
let's not talk about it too much. Keep going.
I was gonna say, reincarnated.
That's me relating.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you got your reincarnation plans ahead of you. That's fine.
Devout Buddhist these days. So.
Yeah. I was literally. This is so funny. You just brought that up. I was literally on the phone with a guitar tech buddy of mine earlier today, and I was talking to him for about an hour on the phone. Hopefully, going to get him on this podcast.
Sick.
But he was talking about how he's been touring. He's older than me. He's been touring since he's in his 20s, and he's been touring for decades at this point. Yeah, 80 exactly 180 years he's been on the road.
That's great.
And he's talked about that where he's had friends that have quote unquote normal lives where they get to they plan vacations every year and they have all of these different things. And he was talking about how these people are, these people that, have all of these different material things and went after the sort of safe bet are also not happy with what they're doing and not happy with where their life is potentially, And it's something that, you might not have access to the same things that people living a conventional life can have. Like, it's automatically harder
like
to...
babies.
Well, I was going to say, it's automatically harder to be in relationships. It's automatically harder to... you might not have the financial means to take a vacation every year. You might not have the financial means to, you might be thinking, oh man, can I cover all my bills this month? Can I cover all of the... If you cover all your bills, you feel like a king.
Don't you feel like touring is your vacation?
Well, a little bit, a little bit.
As close as it gets.
Yeah, and it's, but at the same time, if you're having a good time doing what you love to do and you've gone after what you love, you will be happier than taking that safe route and then being somebody that, you settled down and never... Man. Well, yeah, exactly. And then you never went to Nashville and then you're just sitting there wondering what if for the rest of your life. And then... Yeah, those moments where you get to meet up with writing people and somebody says, "Hey, you're doing a great job." That's why that stuff is so huge because you put your chips into this, on the Nashville bet. And when moments like that pay dividends,
you put time on the line.
Yeah,
that's all you got.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
heavy duty.
Yeah, it's time for sure. Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Away the moments
definitely
the dull days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I
think with my current ex. I think the big thing for him, he was like, you can't stop your life for me, you need to go after this. And was very supportive about everything too. He'd go around telling people oh my gosh, she's gonna be, oh my gosh, please stop. But, but yeah, he was very you gotta go after what you're going after. You can't change your life for me, And I was like, And he's right. I couldn't. I am going after it, and I wasn't going to let anything stop me, Like, but, But he's not around anymore, so it don't matter.
No, there you go.
Guess the next person's just going to have to play that guess of roulette now.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's a relief.
Yes.
Those things you think about those sometimes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was going to say winding down this podcast. What?
You did
What?
the two-step well.
oh, man.
Kid.
He knows me too well at this point when I've put the landing gear down and trying to slowly land the plane
All
at
right.
this point.
I'm putting the tray up right.
Yeah, put your
I don't get yelled at.
fasten your seatbelts, put
Okay,
the tray
Dad.
tables up, finish your snack mix, whatever they've given
Fruit
you
cup.
today. Fruit cup. Yeah. Well, I don't want to leave you with any questions, so I don't
Then
know.
don't.
Yeah, I was going to say anything you would like to ask Sam before we wrap up. David?
I think I have a question or two.
Yeah, well,
I
go
think I
for
do.
it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had them
Cool.
like 40 minutes ago. They
Please
may be
ask
gone
away.
now, the way that I think.
Yeah.
But we'll see what we can retrieve from this whole brain here. Let's see, my dear. Oh, you know what? So you have like what little we actually talked about country. I got a sense of your depth of like obviously you have a broad musical awareness, but you also are really deep in country as a genre. Were you growing up like was that family music? Like the family listened to that? Because it was inflicted on me, and that's the only reason I grew to like it at all. I was just curious, like, did you find it on your own? Was that a found thing, or how'd you like country so much?
I mean,
that's like,
I grew up
as my
in the
grandpa used to
90s,
say,
so
listen to that sick,
the-
sad son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Anytime a country song was on the radio, that's what he used to say.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, growing up, we listened to country music in my house, like, the 90s.
Okay.
So Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, Trisha
Yeah.
Yearwood, Garth Brooks. I
Dude.
grew up on all that, and I love all of them.
90s was
it's
gold.
crazy. And then,
So good.
yes. And then, 90s music is the best music, okay? End of
I'm not going to
discussion.
argue you
But
on that.
then I got into no. And I got into my teenage years, and then I went to Z100 in New York and was listening to all the pop stuff. And I used to fall asleep to classical music and
Right.
so I have a broad range of all different things. But now, getting older, the older I got, the more the more I wanted to listen to different things, or I knew Queen, and I knew, Stevie Wonder, and I knew all these different songs because of CDs I'd listen to or albums. My mom's a big Barry Manilow fan. I grew up on Barry Manilow. Also,
sorry.
I love Barry Manilow now, but back then, I mean, his oh my gosh, is it his 60s or 70s album that he recovered is the best. But and at the time when I was younger, whichever one that is, I may have screwed that up. But my mom was like, "Oh my gosh," and I'm like, "Why are we listening to this?" And then I'm like, now I appreciate it a lot more because that's those are all classic things, and but now I'm into Ella Fitzgerald, and I'm into Michael Bublé, and I'm into even listening to Metallica sometimes. So I really pick and choose my battles on certain genres and just listening and enjoying what's out there, because who knows what influence you're getting to be oh, maybe I could do something like this, or oh, I could do something like that.
Right.
It's just one of those things you
Okay.
grew up with, and it's oh man. So
That
I
makes sense
like to listen to
considering-
everything.
Yeah.
Okay, and that makes sense considering your background, but I'm kind of
Yeah.
as an artist, what is it that is there maybe one particular quality about country that speaks to you as a genre that makes it enjoyable to be working in as a medium? Is there anything particular
I
about
think
it
it's
that
more
stands out for
about.
you?
I think it's more about the honesty and the truth and storytelling that country music does. Again, another conversation I just had in the car today. Weird as this comes, you're asking
Yep.
really great questions. It's just one of those things, I could listen to it and I could see the whole story unfold of what's being written, where in some other genres, sometimes you don't see that as clearly. And that's why I really like country music, because there's a story behind every song. And going to writers' rounds here in Nashville, and you see these songwriters, and they tell the story of how these songs came to be, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, that's just beautiful. I don't know about anybody else. That's that gives me so much joy to see that and hear these stories and then hear those songs and understand where they came from and why they happened and how they happened. And that's where I love to do the writing that I do,
Right.
to tell my story and how it happened and where it happened and how it came to be, you know?
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I just enjoy stuff like that. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, kindly list all the instruments you play.
Oh my gosh. Band teacher 101, fam, okay? Clarinet, bass clarinet, alto, tenor, bari sax, soprano sax, okay? So I think
Wow.
we're at 6. I've dabbled
Kenny
on the
G.
oboe before, so I definitely know a little bit of oboe.
We'll count it. She dabbled oboe.
I've played bassoon.
Jesus.
I can tell you, I had a student tell me one time, you should never touch an oboe, not an oboe, I'm sorry, a bassoon again, which I agree. I did not like bassoon. Sorry, fam. Sorry,
Yeah,
band
fair.
fam. I've played I play trumpet for my kids like every day in school because some of them we need to fix and help. Trombone, baritone. I've done tuba once. Another thing I may never touch again. I've definitely played French horn. That's not my strong suit either. Percussion stuff. I know percussion stuff. I love percussion toys. I love that stuff. I've played cello.
Wow.
I learned cello in college. I learned piano in college. Some of the things I listed off, like I learned them in college and I need to know them now.
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, so I said cello. I do know piano. I do know guitar, but I suck at it. Very bad.
Playing it.
Sorry to
We'll be the
all
judge
my
of that.
songwriters out there. Yeah. Yeah, I can play like maybe 4 chords and that's about it. And I just cannot strum for the life of me. It's
Then
like,
you can
help
play
me
a
sing.
U2 song.
And I sing. Yeah, there you go.
That's an
and
instrument.
I sing. So
Yeah.
there you go.
I
I
lost
feel
count
like
around
I have
17,
fulfilled
to be
this listing. Yeah, it's a little crazy. I mean, if somebody could put something in front, I really want to learn mandolin. I am obsessed with mandolin for some weird reason,
that's
and I'm
an
like, I'm
easy
gonna
one.
learn it.
That's the redneck ukulele.
Yeah, I
That's
mean, does
easy to play,
recorder
dude.
count? We all learned the recorder in the 3rd grade. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Which is hard to play.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
For me.
Is there anything else? It's a technique thing. Oh, and flute. Oh my gosh,
Whoa.
I almost forgot about the flute.
Can't forget flute, girl.
Can't forget about
Yeah.
that. That was the hardest one to learn. But my cooperating teacher during student teaching was like, if you don't learn this, you're never going to get good at it. So she put me with her beginner flute students, and I learned how to do it. And here I am. I play it in pit orchestras now, and I play it for my kids. And I'm not a pro, but I can play it. I can play
Yeah.
to a scale. I can play certain
Man.
notes. I'm not a super pro at it, though. But I
Hey,
can play.
I was gonna say. I was gonna
one
say.
time I got a note
you
out
know.
of it.
Yeah, there you go. I was gonna say, well, man, me just sticking with bass and then kind of. Yeah.
That's a mood.
You're a real good bass player.
Well, I was gonna say, well, thank you, but yeah, just sticking with bass and kind of dicking around with guitar for a few years in there. It's like, man, it's
Yeah.
like, where did the time go?
Yeah.
Why didn't I pick up an oboe?
I'm sitting here going like, my laundry list of instruments feels much smaller now.
Yeah. I'm like,
smaller now.
dang.
But in
you
a good
know,
way.
That's
In a good
crazy.
way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
There,
Oh my
my
goodness.
thirst is quenched.
Yeah.
Your thirst is quenched, and now
There you
That was wonderful.
Davey has a whole laundry list of instruments he's going to be practicing now. I imagine he's going to be getting down on some woodwinds. I
Now I'm
think.
gonna go home and actually maybe order that tenor sax. Wait, yeah, tenor sax, because I have an alto
Yeah, you do.
that
Yeah.
I borrowed from young Maxwell. I'm
Yeah.
getting okay at that. I can play
Yes.
some tunes. I
Yeah.
can play some tunes. But everyone
I
says,
love
now,
saxophone.
is tenor
It's so
really
fun.
easier?
Yeah.
Is tenor really easier to play than alto, would you say?
So
Getting nerdy, sorry
it's-
everyone.
Okay, so it really. No, it's okay. It all varies in like different keys. So every instrument, there's like certain instruments that are in like certain keys. So there's like concert B flat instruments, which is like clarinet, tenor sax, trumpet. That's like in my realm, so I know that's very similar to the
that's keyed a
clarinet. So
certain
that's a
way,
little
yeah.
easier for me to play. Right. Yeah, they're tuned in a certain way. So then there's like your concert C instruments, which is like flute, trombone,
Soprano sax, right?
baritone, tuba. No, soprano sax is actually very similar to alto sax. They're very I believe if I'm correct, they're very similar. Or it's very similar to tenor sax. My brain is like, I can't remember. I'm on summer mode as a teacher, so some of my stuff goes out the window for a couple months.
Fair enough.
And then saxophone. Yeah. And then saxophone and bari sax are in their own, they're in their own realm. They're in the key of G. So they're very similar to each other. So I learned sax, alto sax second. So, and I picked that up in the 7th grade because they're like, if you want to be in jazz band, you should learn saxophone. So I was like, alto sax. And I was like, okay, cool. So, but I picked it up easier because of the mouthpieces and all that. It was much easier to do that versus flute, where the mouthpiece is like an open hole. It's not with a reed. So it's a little different to manage. But yeah, I picked it up pretty quickly. And then when I got to high school, can you pick up a tenor sax? And that was just easy because I knew how to read that music is very similar. And they all read in treble clef, but I know what the notes are, But I mean, now it's second nature to me now because I've been playing for years. But it's just one of those things when you're first learning it, it's like, how do I understand keys?
Yeah, right.
So
right.
That's too real.
So I'm
Briefly,
teaching
I gotta
in
say,
different
I was reflecting on that the other day. Is
homes,
remember when you had to write out the notes in the scale because you couldn't remember the key signature and what accidentals were what in B flat? And I was like, holy Jesus, how much time has gone by since life was like that?
My students write in the notes in their music all the time. I'm like, bro, what are you doing? We got to learn how to actually read it, not write it.
Oh, but I encourage that.
It usually gives me a hard time. And then it's in a key signature, and they don't even write the flat next to it. I'm like, come on, guys. Come on.
Well, that's the whole point of writing it
how
in.
this goes,
Kiddos, that's the whole point of writing it in. And then you start erasing all of the ones that
but
you remember.
Right, it's a bad crutch, but you know what? Eventually they learn how to read it. I mean, one of my students, she's like, I did it, and then this year I finally just learned how to do it without writing it in, and I'm like, good for you. That's fantastic. I said it's just harder. Kids' attention spans are very difficult nowadays. They're more focused on TikTok and other things,
TikTok.
Not so much us as educators.
Jesse
they're just
hates
focused
TikTok
on other
and
things.
anything involving robots.
I was going to say, don't get me started on that social media train, even though I'm trying to get better at it.
Yeah.
It's like...
Okay, I had to actually ask my student how to do a TikTok, and they're just like, wait, you really don't know? I'm like, no. I said, I really don't. One of them came up to me and was like, is this you in this TikTok? And showed me the TikTok video. And I said, first of all, I would never wear khaki pants, khaki shorts to a concert. What makes you think that's me? It's because I wear it to school every day.
Yeah, right.
So they're like, that's you. With this redhead, they're like, it's you. And they're passing it around to each other. I said, why is this a thing? I said, I would never do that. I don't even wear that to a concert. Ew. So,
yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But I don't know how to make one. I was like, what is this TikTok you speak of?
Yeah.
They're all like, that.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Trauma.
So true. Yeah. Well, I know you got to get going to a gig,
The older we get,
Sam.
the more disinformed.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Don't be late for the date.
I almost forgot. I got so engaged with the call. I was like, wait, I have a show tonight? I'm like, I still have to do that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
the
Oh
show.
my gosh.
Yeah. So we'll let you
You
get...
have a debut single coming up.
Yes, I was going to say, we're dealing with an important artist who's got songs to play and stories to tell and gigs I don't want to make her late for. So,
You wouldn't want to do that for
yeah,
you.
so,
No, you're good.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Sam. We appreciate it very much. And we will definitely have a link in the description to pre-save the single because I think this is going to be...
Pre-save, hyper-follow, get with it.
Yeah, look in that description for Sam's socials and her music. And we will...
follow.
Yeah, and we will be sharing that when it comes out. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. I will come back anytime. This is fun.
Awesome. That's the goal. And yeah, hopefully I'll
Yes.
actually be seeing you in person relatively soon, because I think I was talking with some of the folks in the band. And we definitely want to
Yeah.
start doing some Nashville gigs and stuff. So yeah, definitely want to make our...
I heard a little rumor you might be here sooner than you think, and I was like, that's great.
Yeah, I want to kind of be heading out there when I don't have tour stuff and gigs going on, and getting to hang out with lovely folks like yourself,
feel that.
because I had a ball while I was there.
You're already picking up the accent while you talk about it.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
I
I'm a
get
little
told
bit
that
of I'm a
sometimes,
little
too.
You're a little bit country.
yeah I'm
You're a little bit rock and roll.
yeah exactly.
I see that in you, dog.
nice reference.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Sam. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Have a
Sam.
good gig.
Yeah, break a leg.
You too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do you want to clap and sing it or?
No, we never clap sing at the outro. I just kind of start talking, and then you go, "Oh, are we doing the thing now?"
That's happened like the last 7 times, but I feel like in a time before that was different.
Yeah.
But now it's officially becoming a time before where it's like, are you sure are you?
Do you want to
not?
go back? Do you want to go back to the before time where we're like doing some sort of clap thing?
No, I think I could live through. Unless you're talking about like going there actually in the time machine, then no, because no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too hard to try to remember what was.
Well,
I'd rather go back there and just.
We should actually
through it again.
We should actually figure this out. How do you want to start the outros? That like, out of every time. I don't know. How do you want
Are
to
you
do that?
stoned? How do you?
No. Well, how do you want to start it? Because it's always like I just start like I want to fade it into like a natural conversation, and then you always ask, "Oh, are we doing an outro right now?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's."
Oh,
outro
that's
right
because
now.
of my lack of attention to detail. That's all it is. I'll call it what it is.
Yeah, that's
'Cause
fine.
when you describe it like that, it sounds like I haven't been listening to you talk like several times in a row.
I mean, that's my life. Is most people just tuning me out and nodding and like agreeing with me.
But I don't even think I was giving you that much, and that makes me feel bad.
No, that's okay.
Because all of a sudden it's like I came up out of water and said, "Is this the outro?" Like, kind of steps on the outro a little bit when it's all said and done.
Well, that's also me assuming that you would pick up on that, and I wouldn't even mention ahead of time. Like, yeah, let's just make the outros like we're a natural conversation, and at some point we'll talk about the episode.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't
which
know.
is true.
Yeah.
I mean, so we both acknowledge there's faults in our stars. So just start talking about something that comes to your mind, and I'll just respond. And now I will know in my heart of hearts, it's
Yeah.
the outro.
Well, why are there 2 coasters on this table? I just noticed that.
Are they coasters?
I don't know. Well, one is a gavel receiver, and one is a coaster. So
Gavel receiver.
yeah,
My word.
one receives the gavel, one receives beverages. and,
Technology these days.
Yeah, and we've got-
I've fallen behind.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say it's, we don't normally have the two wooden block things going on over here. So yeah,
You seem stimulated by their presence.
I'm curious. It's like nothing changes in your house, and all of a sudden you have two things right next to each other. Yeah, I don't know. The lava lamp's here, the amp is here, the guitars
Yeah.
are here, and now another coaster has spawned. Interesting.
That's like this one time, the carpet got soaked really bad in the living room of my house. So
Yeah.
I pulled up the carpet and realized that the pad was destroyed by the mess I'd made. So I pulled up the pad.
Oh no.
And then I realized that there was like a crack in the slab. And so I pulled out the chunk of concrete, just curious at that fact. And just at that moment, my parents came home and opened the door, and they're like, they thought that I was like taking the house apart bit by bit. And they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, there's an explanation to this.
Yeah.
So it was maybe like that kind of sensation where you're just like, I swear to God, it looks like you're tearing the house apart. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Maybe
I'd cop to something like that.
yeah, maybe I'm going out on a limb and just saying that that's most of our musician life is just, people walking in on what we're doing awkwardly or observing our lives awkwardly, and then you having to go in one form or another. No, there's an explanation for this.
Yeah. It's like the sense of curiosity is a factor in creative people like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if somebody else isn't pursuing it with the same sort of intensity, all our behaviors on the surface understandably can seem a little bizarre.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say usually having to be up late just working on writing or doing other things like that probably seems odd to most people.
We're like You're so right, because like we're weird at the start, and then we do this circadian rhythm destroying thing that we do called our careers, and then you're loopy every day, and then you pound caffeine, and you go from like super cranked to super exhausted every other minute, and then you say weird things in that state.
Yeah. Well, that's
how we are all the time.
I've kind of I'm learning to let go of a lot of things in my life. And one of those is a sleep schedule, a solid sleep schedule, because I feel like that's just. I sleep fine, but like, I go to bed at this time every night and I wake up around this time. I'll adhere to a point, but then just life happens and that's just sometimes not possible. So it's the same way that I've learned that like if you're flying, somewhere or you're traveling somewhere and then you end up like 3 hours ahead, like if you go to the other side of the country, for example, you don't look at like, oh man, it's this o'clock back home. You just go, this is what time it is. And it's more just like, this is the amount of time I'm going to sleep today. And that is the thought and not like, oh man, I'm not in my routine. And then you get out of that sort of perspective and headspace and you just go, this is when I'm going to bed. This is what time it is. And when you live that way, I don't know, you're just kind of in the moment. It doesn't make you any less loopy, but you feel a little more comfortable with the whole thing.
I might have to look into that. I'm one of those people that if I go somewhere out of the regular time zone, the only thing on my mind is what time it is. Well, not the only thing, but like routinely reoccurs to my mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, it's this back home.
Yeah. No, you'll still feel tired, but you don't have that like weirdness of, it's this time and I'm adjusting. You just kind of like, what time is it? Oh, it's 11:30. You don't go like, but it's 8:30. No, it's 11:30. It's fine.
Yeah, no, I realize that those things are not good for our body rhythms in general, I think, to try to use the arbitrariness of the time on the clock at that moment, regardless of what you've been doing, then you're not really factoring in all the things that are actually like affecting your human body, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I've learned, just like, long story short, that like, if I wake up and I'm still tired, I set my alarm early so I can honestly decide whether I want to get up and start doing the things I need to do, like stretch because I hate doing it and I have to do it.
Yeah.
Or if I wake up at that regular prescribed time, no matter whether I went to bed early or not, maybe I feel the need for more sleep. Well, then I usually get up, change position, get myself comfortable again, and go back to sleep for another like 20 minutes, half hour.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that would work for everybody, but that makes such a huge fucking difference in the psychosis that is my walking existence.
Fair enough.
I just pooped my pants.
Welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah.
I just pooped my pants.
The TED Talk about sleep. Everybody get ready to get stimulated about this. TED Talk about sleep.
I feel like your TED Talk would be a very Vermin Supreme-esque sort of delivery.
Who that is?
Oh, well, that's a Google you got to do after this, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah. Or whatever.
Coolsies.
Duck, go, Bing, whatever you're doing. Yeah. Look, punch Vermin Supreme into the internets and prepare to be amazed.
I got my own search engine.
Yeah. Yeah. Davey?
No, Daddy's Big Search.
No. Fair enough.
Daddy's Big Search.gov.
Yes.
I'm working with them now.
Yeah. Well, hey, if anybody was going to watch...
change it, PST.
Oh.
You got to change it. If you want to change the system, you got to change it from the inside.
Well, if anybody's going to keep an eye on my internet search history, I'd pick you probably,
As your attorney, that's the safest thing you could do.
The safest thing I could do,
From
exactly.
a legal perspective.
I'm hedging my bets.
Yeah.
So, thank you once again to Sam Ferrara for being on this podcast. She was?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Please check out her music above or below. I can't tell where the description is nowadays.
I forgot.
I forgot too. So covering all my ground here. So check her music out. Check out her social media. She is going to be putting out more music, and she's got more of that in the works. So please keep tabs on her if that is something that you are into, and check out and enjoy some country music songwriting. So
go now.
Yes.
And go pre-save and hyper follow. You got Spotify, you got Apple, you got the other one. Just get on it and do it now so that it pops up when it debuts next week on the 2nd. So you don't have to go look for it because you're busy.
Yeah.
You're a beautiful citizen. You just deal with us.
Yeah.
You don't need that extra step of having to look for it. Just go ahead and set up, what is Whiskey Memory. I almost lost it, but then I got it. Whiskey Memory.
Yeah,
Just go ahead and pre-order or pre-save it.
Yeah.
Pre-game it.
Thank you very much, citizens, and we will see you next week.
That's his thing. He's still doing it.
Sonic City Council was created by Jesse Davidson and Davey Sipes and engineered by Max Taylor at Desert Sound Studio in Palmdale, California. Thank you to Disaster Cabinet for the outro music. Intro music written by Max Taylor. Sonic City Council is produced in association with Amped Music Academy and the Showcase Venue. For more information, visit theshowcasevenue.com.